We're explaining the voting process and voting by mail, and I think we're doing a really good job of explaining why it could take longer to know the results than just Election Day. I want to ask people to continue doing that. Just because we've done it one time, people are really starting to tune in a big way. Interest in this story is very high, and but just because we've done it once or twice or three times doesn't mean that we should stop. I know that we get tired of doing the story before the audience does, and many viewers are really only tuning in now for the first time. So let's not assume they know the whole story. Continue doing what we're doing. We're doing a really good job. Let's keep it up, and at the same time, obviously, we're a day away from the debate. We're less than 2 weeks away from the election, and coronavirus hovers over all of it. And so we need to maintain our intensity on that story as well. Just one other note before I turn it over to David is I want to remind everybody that I am doing a town hall today at noon Eastern time. We've received an extraordinary number of questions, and we're going to try to get through most of them. That's at noon Eastern time today. You're going to get a link to watch that just before noon Eastern time. And I'll remind everybody again at the end. But that's town hall today at noon that you'll be able to watch. Okay, let's start with David and politics.
Good morning, Jeff. So I think, Stephen Collinson gets at it quite well in his piece this morning about the scattershot, erratic search for some form of a closing message from the president that was clearly on display again last night. The 60-minute stunt, the latest example in this. And, I think his comments last night about not coming back to Erie, had no plans to do so. He wouldn't have to, but here he is. Hello, Erie, can I have your vote? Again, the quiet part out loud, and I think actually gets at where Donald Trump finds himself in this race 13 days before Election Day. I think that gets at it quite well, actually. He'll be back at it in North Carolina later today at a rally. Kamala Harris is also campaigning in North Carolina today, so that'll be the center of quite a bit of campaign activity today, and Pence is in New Hampshire and Ohio. While Joe Biden remains off the trail doing debate prep. I do just want to note, I still think the Melania Trump canceling her planned appearance at that rally last night, which was going to be her first campaign appearance in over a year. Obviously, Kate Bennett has done tremendous reporting on this. I just think that continues to be a really fascinating thread that we don't have any information that she's going to be part of this campaign going forward. Obviously, her own health issues, but just the missing Melania of it all, I think, is a really interesting, continues to be an interesting story. As I mentioned, Biden is off the trail doing debate prep, but he is sending out his most beloved supporter among Democrats. Former President Barack Obama will be making his first in-person campaign trail appearance on behalf of Joe Biden today in Philadelphia. You'll recall it was also the location where he went on the eve of the 2016 election with the Clintons. It's also the location where he delivered his convention speech for Joe Biden this year, and Barack Obama will be back in Philadelphia to make the case for Biden. You saw he put out a video on Twitter last night telling people that this is the most important vote of their lifetime. And the Biden campaign obviously is hoping that his substantial strength with African Americans, with Latinos, with young people, where they are hoping he can help in all those areas with turbocharging turnout for Biden. Jeff Zeleny is in Philadelphia, and he and Dan America have a piece looking at Obama back in the fray. The money race between these campaigns gets ever more clear with the latest campaign finance filings. Strip away the parties and the outside groups, just the Trump campaign versus the Biden campaign. Frederica has a story up on digital looking at this, and you see that Joe Biden entered October, the final month of this campaign, with nearly 3 times the amount of cash on hand, as did President Trump. As you know, we've reported before about his spending, the out-of-hand spending that was going on in that campaign for some time. But the incumbent president, this is usually one of the big advantages of incumbency and one of the big tools in the arsenal of why we see incumbent presidents tend to get reelected in the modern era more than not. This is one piece of that, and it just was completely squandered in this campaign. Just recall, he's been raising money for this effort since the day of his inauguration. And Ryan Noble's going to take a look at that for CNN tonight. Jeff, you mentioned the debate tomorrow night. Obviously, that is where all attention is going to begin to turn. You saw that Biden gave an interview to a local station in Wisconsin where he said he likes the new enforcement mechanism that the commission has put in and is glad that there won't be as many interruptions. You hear Donald Trump suggesting that if Biden has 2 minutes uninterrupted to talk, perhaps he'll lose his train of thought, and that it might work for him. The Biden strategy, as it was in the first debate as well, sort of to take that opportunity of tens of millions of Americans and just try to talk directly to them in the camera. And I think we'll probably see him do that more tomorrow. So we've got Jessica Dean up in Nashville this morning. Arlette Saenz will be up from there this afternoon. MJ Lee also available on the Biden coverage. And this afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern, we'll be releasing brand new CNN battleground state polls in the critical battleground states of Pennsylvania and Florida. We won't have final numbers back until later this morning, but we anticipate it will be sort of and this will match the trend of what we've seen across a lot of the polling, a margin of error race down in Florida and a Biden lead in Pennsylvania, again, showing that Biden's strength in these polls right now is in that upper Midwest Rust Belt region that Hillary Clinton lost so narrowly to Donald Trump. This LeBron James interview in the New York Times about fighting against disinformation in the Black community, I think is fascinating. And again, watching LeBron James get more and more involved in this political moment is certainly worthy of conversation. And I think that is where we start today.
Okay, great. David, thank you very much. I do think, and I think we've done a very good job with this. But I do think the combination of Obama's video last night and the Biden ad during the World Series was an interesting data point in the Biden campaign, which clearly has, gone into debate prep this week and not out on the campaign, and they're using these, as you say, cash advantages and Obama and money and television advertising. I just think it's a really good story. Washington.
Okay, so just on the president covered, aside from the lines that David mentioned about Melania not going, we are about to put out this line yesterday that came out of the Sinclair interview, where when he was asked about whether he could have done anything differently during COVID, the answer was not much. So in a line reminiscent of it is what it is, he completely not taking any responsibility for this. So that is the Trump and COVID piece. Then obviously this stimulus package, which refuses to die officially, but and they keep talking about Pelosi administration even this morning saying that they are closing in on agreement. The sticking points appear to be the state and local government and liability. The problem, however, is that Mitch McConnell is clearly not for this and has made that very clear. So even if they get a deal, it's unclear that will happen. This, as Mitch McConnell does seem to be marching forward towards the Barrett confirmation hearings, which are on track for a vote next week. On the big voting story, $33 million have been cast. Again, more breaking records in Georgia, Ohio. One note of, a little good news for the Republicans. Also, these voter registration numbers coming out showing that there are more voters and that the Republicans have registered more new voters, telling them to support the president or else. These emails seem to have been routed through foreign servers, and Doni and Alex are on that today. A couple other things to note, this New York Times reporting on Trump is still maintaining a bank account in China. This is one of 3 countries. This obviously makes it difficult ahead of the debate tomorrow for the president to claim that it's all about Biden and China and that relationship, given that reporting. There are going to be oral arguments today in the Carroll defamation lawsuit. This is over whether justice can take over the president's defense. Kara is outside the court, and we expect that that could come quickly today. And then just these Dianne Feinstein storyline, this backlash over her role on the Senate Judiciary with the Barrett hearings. The top 2 Democrats, both Schumer and Durbin, refusing to say she would stay there, and it just feels like it's a matter of time before she is either removed or leaves as chairman of that committee. And that's what I got.
Right. Okay. Let's move to COVID and Matthew, and then we'll open it up to discuss everything. Matthew?
Okay, rapid acceleration. That's the latest assessment of what is coming. And this morning, more than half of the states on our map are rising. None is trending down right now. Yesterday saw more than 60,000 new cases, which is also roughly the number of the average of daily cases right now. And that average is the highest since early August. We stand in the U.S. at 8.3 million cases and 221,000 deaths. Yesterday saw 933 deaths reported, the highest in weeks. Scott Gottlieb predicting next week will bring rapid acceleration in the numbers, that the U.S. is 2 to 3 weeks behind Europe. Hospitalizations, which Sanjay is focusing on as the most important indicator, are at about 40,000, the highest in 2 months. And of course, the CDC out with new numbers on just how undercounted deaths may have been, saying the pandemic year has had nearly 300,000 more deaths than a typical year, meaning 80 or 90,000 deaths would have been from COVID or problems related to the pandemic, not already counted. And the Surgeon General made the point of tweeting this morning how many more people would have to die in a herd immunity strategy, that there's no example of this kind of strategy being successful for COVID. Of course, we know this, but the fact that the Surgeon General is making a point of saying it on Twitter speaks to the concern, I think, on the task force about the messaging on this. As we look around the country at key regions and trends, again, the CNN map, 26 states up, 24 steady, 0 going in the right direction. The second wave hitting the battleground states hard, as well as other places, of course. Pennsylvania recording the 9th day over 1,000 cases. Wisconsin, 4,500 cases on the first day of early voting yesterday. Ohio, record hospitalizations. Colorado, record case average. And Omar was just up in Milwaukee on the intersection of early voting and COVID. New Mexico enacting new restrictions on bars and restaurants and stores. The governor saying this is because the health system is being overwhelmed, and that establishments who report multiple cases in a 2-week period have to temporarily close. New Mexico and Missouri, the 2 reddest states, the sharpest week-to-week increases on the CNN map. Illinois, another example of returning to restrictions. Part of the state, the Chicago suburbs, banning indoor dining and limiting gatherings. We've got Adrian in Chicago. There's North Dakota, which has by far the highest per capita number of cases. Well, it also recorded just the highest number of cases in its history yesterday, the first time over 1,000. Tennessee talking about a dramatic rise in hospitalizations in the past month, mostly from the rural counties, and Utah officials warning that the ICU use levels over 75% are unsustainable. Martin Savage has a really good piece for Dayside inside that overwhelmed situation. Frustrated doctors and patients who can't find ICU beds for things other than COVID. On the school front, the latest situation on college campuses that is not pretty, the University of Michigan undergrads under a stay-at-home order until Election Day. They account for more than 60% of cases in that county. Columbus, Ohio, staying with remote learning until mid-January. And New York, basically talking about how well its biggest in the nation in-person experiment is going. The mayor saying the testing program has been remarkable. The results are remarkable. Only 28 positives of the 16,000 tests administered be on education lines. From the health team, we will hear from many top health officials today. Of course, we heard from the Surgeon General already, but with vaccine authorization possibly weeks away, we'll hear from the head of the FDA at 2:45 at the Milken conference. Of course, the FDA seems to have successfully fought off the White House pressure campaign about vaccine rules. We'll hear from Fauci this hour and next hour at two different conferences, and the NIH director at 4 o'clock. And then Redfield and Azar hold an in-person briefing at the CDC at 3:45 this afternoon. So the potential for a lot of headlines from the top
Welcome to the AT&T teleconferencing service. Enter your access code. Enter your attendee. Your line has been muted. Press star 6 to unmute your own line.
And we've got the wrap piece, which today is Nick Watt for 4, 6, 8, and 10. And that's COVID today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah. Just one thing to add, while we were on this call, Meadows just in an interview saying it is very likely they're going to release the interview. So it looks like we could see that shortly.
Okay. And if they release that, then obviously we can just go with it, not worry about 60 minutes. Okay, let's open it up. And anybody with any thoughts on politics or Washington or Biden or Trump or coronavirus? Anyone with any thoughts?
Yeah, Jeff, I have one. It's regarding the ad campaigns. You know, I have to review them for us, so I've seen a lot. But I've seen a lot just watching a lot of television. I can't speak for what's going on all over the country. But connecting the dots between Biden not being out there, him having a huge money advantage, and the kind of media campaign that he's running, which is optimistic and positive and not heavily on negative advertising, so that he's sending the signal through his ad campaign across the country that America will be better with Joe Biden. I'm just saying that's an observation. I don't know if it's exactly the way in all the battleground states. Georgia is one of them, and that's what we're seeing here. Countering that against what the Trump campaign is trying to do from the campaign trail and conservative media, which is attack. And I just think it's something that the shows might want to take advantage of because it's readily available to show. And even the super PAC ads that are being done, that are being shared on Twitter, are, you know, really uplifting with everything from the Star Spangled Banner as the music background. And the one that many are talking about, which is the Elliott narrated ad that ran in the World Series yesterday. So that's just all something that I think might be something that both digital and the shows might want to focus on.
Yeah, look, Rick, I would say that I thought... hold on one second, Mitra. Oh, go ahead, Mitra. Go ahead.
No, it's related. I mean, I was actually just going to say, speaking of positive messaging, I thought the AOC Twitch game last night was kind of an example of that for a new generation. And I know we often say social media is not America, but I think video games are very much where America's at, especially during the pandemic. And this particular game is one way people have been staying in touch over the last few months. So it's kind of related to what Rick is saying, but I think for a new generation, I just wanted to mention it as a smart move and perhaps something we look back on as, I'm as kind of on AOC, I think she's as polarizing as the next person, but I think this was actually a pretty smart move and, again, resonates to the positive message that Rick's talking about.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mitra. I do want to just circle back to Rick's thesis, though, of the money and the process and the ads. I actually thought New Day did a very, very good job of connecting all those dots this morning and having that conversation. And I think to Rick's point, and to what New Day did, connecting all those dots, it is a very good story for our shows to look at. I think Rick's observation is spot on. I think New Day did a really good job with it, and I think our other shows should as well. Other thoughts?
Jeff, Carl, quick question. Now that Newsmax has gone with the Hunter Biden child porn Giuliani thing full bore, and it's inevitable that Trump is going to talk about it, and maybe even in the debate, God only knows. Where are we in terms of how to acknowledge at some point, if we are going to, that this thing is out there, and what is the process of investigating how this computer got there?
Okay, I think those are separate questions. I'll let Washington handle the investigation into how it got there. With regard to the filth that they're spreading with regard to child pornography and all of that, I do not believe that we should be covering those allegations, even if they're out there on Newsmax, which nobody in the world knows. And so I do not think we should be covering them. I do think that to the degree that we want to cover it through the right-wing media looking glass, that they are proffering all this stuff, okay, very carefully. But I think covering this story as well, they said this and the other side said this, is not something that we should be doing. We've got a ton of flashing red lights about all of this, and so I don't want to be doing that. Now, with regard to investigating the provenance of the laptop, I'll allow Washington to address that.
Yeah, so what we know, obviously, is that they are looking into whether or not there is foreign actors involved in getting this laptop information to Rudy and Bannon. Evan is also working on some reporting that's coming out later this morning about how the FBI inserted themselves into this, which is not the way things should go right before an election. So Evan's working on that today, but we're all over the where it came from part of this.
Thank you for raising that, Carl.
Jeff, I think everybody should be prepared over the next 48 hours that I don't know how many shows are going to take them or do them, but going into the debate and after the debate and on Friday, we're going to get a lot of, I'm sure, Trump campaign people on the air. And if they go there, I mean, there is plenty of pushback to use if people like Tim Murtaugh start spewing, why aren't you investigating the Hunter Biden story? I mean, Fox News wouldn't do this story. Rudy Giuliani will not let journalists vet the material. We know the Russians have planted forged material in stuff that's been hacked, so some could be real and some not. I mean, there are a lot of things to push back on if people start spewing that on our air, which is probably likely possible in the next 48 hours.
I also, and I regret that I didn't do this at the top, I also want to point out that actually there is a very serious financial impropriety story involving American politics right now, and it's the one that Jake Tapper broke yesterday for CNN about real concern across many departments and agencies, especially at the Pentagon, over the Trump administration, over the White House trying to pressure a grant that would essentially be a no-bid contract for Department of Defense spectrum, and that the White House is pushing this for prominent Republicans and supporters of Trump who have investments in the company. This was a tremendous piece of reporting by Jake, and if it were anywhere else, we would be saying, "Can we go with this?" And I acknowledge it's complicated. Far more insidious. So I'm sorry that I forgot to mention that at the top.
Jeff, Carl again, one other thing, because I've gone as far as I can go with it and can't get it. But we still don't know why Pence came back to Washington that Friday night. And the question of whether or not he and Barr met. And if there's any way whatsoever that anybody, at Justice especially, can find out if Pence and Barr met, and what the hell Pence came back for. Could be innocuous, could be unimportant, but it sure is weird that nobody can find out.
Thank you, Carl. Again, I'll ask Washington to follow up on your lead there and your gut on that. I think that we should try to do some reporting on that as well. Other thoughts? Okay. Is there anything else in Washington?
Sorry, no, there's nothing else.
Thank you. Matthew, the rest of domestic, please.
Okay, the ever-expanding fallout in the Breonna Taylor case, this incredibly rare moment yesterday, hearing from a grand juror, and now we hear from one of the officers involved in the deadly raid for the first time, Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, telling ABC the raid had, quote, nothing to do with race, and in fact says he believes that if police didn't wait so long to enter the apartment, Breonna would still be alive, suggesting that the prolonged knocking gave the boyfriend time to make a plan, get his gun, and open fire. Also has a message for the Taylor family. He hopes they find peace, hopes this tragedy never happens to anyone else. Obviously, this came after this unprecedented ruling allowing grand jurors to speak and more grand jury transcript information to be released. So we are looking to see what comes next in this one. And then just finally noting that there is a pre-trial hearing at 2:30 this afternoon in the Jacob Blake case. This is actually the set of charges against Blake himself. It's a Zoom hearing. Blake expected to appear by Zoom as he did at the last one. And I think that's it.
Okay, Matthew, make sure you feed the dog. International.
Yeah, we're very focused on the US election, obviously, but I'll run through the COVID strands first. Ireland is the big one for us. It goes into national lockdown at midnight tonight for 6 weeks. Very strict rules around enforcement, heavy fines if people break it. And the first European country to go into full lockdown since the first wave. Nick Robertson is on that. We're going to bring up Oren as well because it's just interesting to look at how the parallels between Ireland and Israel, with Israel just having gone through this, going into lockdown, numbers coming down, then easing back up. We wanted to get into it earlier in the week, and it's a good day to get into it now. And then just broadly, the complete lack of unity across the United Kingdom. Wales is going into lockdown on Friday night, which is really just a means to stop the English coming in. And then you look at England, and there's just this complete chaos with cities sort of pushing back on government regulations, Manchester being the one that we're looking at the moment. So we're covering that as well. And then broadly, the rise across Eastern European countries, Scott McLean is on that. And then the other story I wanted to mention are these protests that we're seeing in Nigeria, 2 weeks of protests against police brutality, claims of kidnapping, harassment, extortion. And basically we have eyewitness reports that say that police opened fire on protesters in Lagos and that there have been multiple deaths. We're not sure how many, we can't confirm that right now, but it's a really serious situation brewing there, and we've got Eleni Giokos on that.
Okay, thank you. Business?
Jeff, good morning. Tuesday stimulus deadline come and gone. As Virginia mentioned, all eyes are going to be on the game of hot potato between the White House, Pelosi, and McConnell. Investors still somewhat hopeful that a deal can get done. Futures ticking higher this morning. We're watching obviously the coronavirus recession as it's accelerating technological changes. The World Economic Forum saying that the world could lose 85 million jobs within the next 5 years because of these technological changes. A lot of it has to do with automation, as Andrew Yang has been noting for weeks and months. He is appearing on First Move this morning at 9. Meanwhile, a report from the New York Labor Department yesterday noting that nearly 500,000 New Yorkers still unemployed in the city. And how is this playing out in corporate America right now? Amazon announcing this morning that it is letting staff members stay home until the middle of next year. Spokesperson saying that some members there can stay home through January 30th, 2021. And of course, the battle between Governor Newsom and Disney rages on. Disneyland saying that they will stay closed for at least several more weeks, possibly months, after California released its long-awaited guidance Tuesday on how parks can safely reopen. Disney saying it's unworkable and that the guidelines will keep them shuttered for the foreseeable future. Christina Alessi is up on that. And that is where we begin today.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so before we move to digital, does anybody have anything else they want to talk about?
Hey, Jeff, it's Dave. I just have two things. One is, doesn't the grand jury statement just illustrate that the Attorney General just flat out lied about what he did with the grand jury? He said they had these allegations and rejected them or cleared the police. I just think we need to dig a little deeper on that. And then secondly,
so
go ahead.
On that front, I think you're right, and I do think we should put some full-time resources into digging a little deeper on what David is raising. I totally agree, and I know that our focus is so much on COVID, as it should be, and our focus isn't on the election, as it should be. So there's no, but this is a really important story, and I would like to dedicate some investigative resources to what the hell what the grand jurors are saying. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
The second thing is, with all the financial troubles or the cash haul issues with the Trump campaign, it just reminds me of Brad Parscale, and I'm curious what his status is, and where we haven't heard from him, I think, since he was taken into custody. But I think an overview of the spending habits of the campaign here is that he took a lot of heat for some of the indulgences he, made on himself. But I think it's a news peg to check in on him.
I think, what's his status? What's the status of the investigation into the missing money or alleged missing money, and the overall just terrible or bad financial shape that campaign is in? I think you're totally right. I think those are really good suggestions.
Jeff?
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
Sean, I just want to...
Go ahead, Sean. Go.
I just wanted to mention again, I mean, the story of the 545 kids who were separated from their parents and can't be reunited because of the administration's incompetence really cuts to so many emotional stories we've been dealing with, and I know it's going to get overwhelmed. The other thing I just want to mention about the Hunter Biden story, having some insight into Rudy's decline and being used as a dupe. If you look at some of the flow-throughs and how they're being promoted, right? It's Ukraine trutherism around impeachment. It's China. It's corruption. It's allegations of child pornography with QAnon and all that's resonant. That's a sign of how sort of, to me, this really is a pretty obvious job. There are just too many narrative lines that percolate on the extremes that all flow through this magical laptop.
Yeah, for sure. But back to your first point, I do think you're totally right. I'm not sure we have focused enough on 545 missing or kids who can't be reunited. I think we should do that story too. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, Jeff, that was exactly the story I was going to be talking about. So we are on it at CNN Espanol, and we're actually looking for some of the lawyers in Central America as well. The fact that they, because of COVID, basically stopped looking for the families, and some of these children were babies when they were separated from their parents. And it's been now a couple of years since Jeff Sessions started that policy. It's just horrifying that there's still, 500 children that have not seen their parents in years.
Yeah, I totally agree. Other thoughts?
If this were happening I was just going to say, if this were happening elsewhere, we would call this a grievous violation of human rights. The tragedy of a child being separated from their parents, I think we have to get inside the trauma to the children. And then, if we're talking about Jeff Sessions, we can't give Rod Rosenstein a free pass either, because his fingerprints are all over this as well.
So, Washington, I would like to assign somebody to do this story, and I have no doubt that there's several shows that will raise their hands that will air it, and but I want to do this story.
Excellent.
I want to recommend that Miles Taylor probably have a lot of insight on this for our reporting out of Washington.
Other thoughts, please?
On the White House releasing the video 60 Minutes interview, this would be unprecedented, of course. I think it raises a lot of media questions about why is there even a White House version of this? How does that happen? Has that happened in the past? Did news organizations agree to let the White House take their own interviews? And are we playing into the hands of the White House to broadcast something that they're going to be sending out, whether it's complete or in excerpts, and how we should handle that? Our policy for everybody who's listening is we don't allow people to videotape our interviews. Occasionally, heads of state will ask us to, and we will agree to let them have a lockdown camera for archive on the head of state. I don't know what CBS allowed in this situation, but that would be all part of what comes out.
That's my understanding, is they claimed they needed it for archival, and there is always a stenographer there, so, but that they claimed they needed it for archival purposes.
Well, I think the media team should begin reporting this out with CBS and figure this out and get into it. And I think all of Rick's questions are the appropriate ones that we'll need to ask and consider. Okay, digital.
Hey, good morning. 32 million uniques yesterday. That's great. Collinson on Trump insulting Fauci for telling the truth was our overall number one. And then even though it happened later in the day, Trump walking out on Leslie Stahl was number two for the day yesterday. This morning, it is Trump makes the scene as he seeks a comeback. He spent the day yesterday performing antics that might appeal to his base, but also threatened to alienate the moderate voters that he needs. That is 20,000 concurrence, and that is Collinson. Then number two, like yesterday, Trump abruptly ending the 60 Minutes interview. The tax record showing that Trump has a Chinese bank account from the New York Times is scoop. The legal doctrine that could sway the election. This is Ariane de Vogue on the Purcell principle. It's a really smart piece. Joe Lockhart's op-ed is in the top 5 this morning. The headline is if Trump loses, he'll take this deal. He basically explores the argument that Trump's survival instinct and his penchant for putting his own interests above the country's or anyone else's may actually guarantee a peaceful transition of power. Jake's good story is in the top 10 and agree 100% on the tragedy of the 545 orphans. Our version 1 from Priscilla Alvarez is up and out now, and we definitely want to do more on that. And that did well yesterday. The top videos this morning are Fauci channeling The Godfather in response to Trump, and then Brianna's response to Trump calling us, CNN, bastards for covering COVID / just doing our job. A handful of other things this morning. Kate Baldwin's great piece is up. Black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party, and they feel the heavy burden of this election. It's just so good. So lots of play for that today. I want to see how the landscape is shaping up on election night. Look to North Carolina. That's Harry Enton. We also have an original video coming up soon from John King walking audiences through Florida. This is the latest in a series he's doing on digital on swing states. And then just zooming out, back on the road to 270, we have a standing, updated, interactive map. It's on our homepages. It's in the top 10, actually. So again, to the point that audiences are here for it. And it can be found at cnn.com/road to 270. So if anyone wants to drop that into copy, that is where it is. Also, I should just point out, Seltzer and Reliable in the newsletter last night made the very good point that many Americans are plugging into the election for really the first time and right now, and the importance of zooming out and starting stories at the beginning and not the middle, and just, a reminder that not everyone has been as in it and obsessive as we have all been. And I just think it's a really smart reminder. So we're going to do a column out of that. On COVID, our main bar, the framing is daily infections in the U.S. are triple what the daily average was in June. And the U.S. is bracing for what many say will be the worst surge yet. There is an excellent visual interactive on the shadow pandemic, an explosion of domestic abuse on a global scale. This is from Arwa and Rosie Tompkins and a lot of other smart folks, and it is up and out, and you will see it on our site. India is facing a double health threat this winter, not just the pandemic, but pollution. Amazon workers used to get notifications about confirmed cases, but those have stopped now, and they're wondering why. And New York City restaurants have a new challenge. It's outdoor heating. The heaters are hard to find. Not all of them are legal, and for many restaurants, they are the key to staying in business during the cold months. So just a really good mix. We've got lots more, obviously, on COVID, but a really good mix of COVID headlines today. And then two last things. A package of smart analysis on the U.S. versus Google, why dethroning Google's search engine is so difficult. And then another one on Google's defense against the government, its use. And this explores what will essentially be Google's argument, because it has been in the past. It's a free service that everyone likes, and there's no harm to the consumer. And then lastly, this year, more immigrant voters are eligible than ever before. And Georgia has led the way. The number of eligible immigrant voters has grown in Georgia at the fastest rate in the nation. Catherine Shoykit spoke to 6 immigrants about why they are excited to cast their ballots for the first time as Americans. An immigrant from Mexico says, I've waited 21 years for this moment. I can wait 21 hours in line to cast my vote. And a Ugandan American says he's so excited and he feels a sense of hope that the country can heal, that voting is an act of healing, and he can't wait to use his voice and play his part. That is out on our homepages now. There's original photography, and it is these 6 immigrants in their own voices, and it's just really powerful and compelling. That's it.
Thank you very much. Don?
Good morning, Jeff. Jessica Dean in Nashville, all Bayside, as we begin a look ahead and push to the debate tomorrow, and these 2 candidates taking very different approaches. She'll get into the Obama getting onto the stump for Biden, the video he put out last night, and the new Biden ad. John King continues with his magic wall looks at the road to 270,
today's slice is the money game, where the Dems money, where it's going toward Biden and what states they're spending huge amounts in, and what does that tell us? Me and Malika Henderson and Jeff Zeleny on that, and then John Harwood and Caitlin Collins out of the White House. A more erratic Trump, the First Lady angle, Dana Bash, Abby Phillip, and Sung Min Kim. The voting issues, Donny O'Sullivan and Kristen Holmes on the voter email threats and what is the genesis of those. The DHS calling for patience, don't expect a result election night. Diane Gallagher with the continuing long lines in North Carolina for the early vote. John King has Ben Ginsburg to land on all these voting issues. Brianna has a notable booking, the head of elections in Shelby County, Tennessee. That's where the poll worker was fired for asking the voters wearing the Black Lives Matters T-shirt to turn the T-shirts inside out. So that should be a good discussion. On coronavirus, the Surgeon General's very grim warning saying a push to herd immunity means many more deaths. Sanjay Gupta and Elizabeth Cohen on that. We'll hear from Fauci next hour in front of the Infectious Diseases Society, and we'll turn the news he makes there. Hitting all the different hotspots, Martin Savage with his piece, airing momentarily on Utah hospitals overwhelmed. Adrian Broadus on Illinois rollback and the University of Michigan forcing all virtual learning again. Omar Jimenez, the surging cases are not deterring voters. He just had a great walk and talk along the long line there in Wisconsin. And Jacqueline Howard wrapping up some other studies on child infection rates and the racial disparity issues. Jim and Poppy have the head of a South Dakota hospitals group, really landing on just the issues in the upper Midwest and rural counties where the country's seeing the highest new cases per capita in those counties. And then John King has the mayor of Miami-Dade and the fight over the curfew that he wants to keep imposed. International whips, big focus on Ireland and UK, the storylines that Mira mentioned. I do want to mention that Kate's piece on the Michigan Black women voters is going to get another airing on John King. And we'd have a booking of one of those voters out of that to continue that discussion. It's a really rich discussion. On stimulus, Lauren Fox and Manu Raju. On McConnell's calculus, we just talked to Representative Clyburn, who believes there will be a package passed in the lame duck session, not before the election. And we are going to get into two final stories today, Shimon, on the Breonna Taylor case, both the grand juror piece of it and the cop sound. And we are going to be doing the 545 children still separated from their parents. That's Jessica Schneider, who's actually ahead at the end of this hour, and we will address later on today as well. Okay. Thank you, John. Washington.
Good morning. So on the lead today, Caitlin Collins at the White House for us on Trump saying he wouldn't do much differently on the COVID response. Arlette takes Biden off the trail today and prepping for the debate. Jeff Zeleny has a piece specifically looking at Obama back on the trail in Philadelphia for 4 o'clock. At 3, David Axelrod is going to dig into some of the ads of the cycle, including that Sam Elliott one and some of the themes that Rick was mentioning. Mia Love and Paul Begala will talk debate and strategy and the money in the final weeks of the campaign. Pam Brown has our voting wrap that will go at 3 o'clock. At 4, David Chalian will have those new battleground polls that he mentioned out of Pennsylvania and Florida. Mia, Malika, and Abby will join for analysis there. On coronavirus, Nick Watt has our COVID wrap. William Hazeltine will join at 3 o'clock and Sanjay at 4 on all of the medical headlines and the rapid acceleration of cases and the spikes across the country. We've also got the superintendent of Arlington, Virginia schools booked on the slow return of kids to the classroom. We'll check in on the stimulus and where things stand with Julia Chatterley. We're also interested in doing the child separation story.
And in the Situation Room, we'll be staying heavy politics one day ahead of the debate, which we'll be pushing heavily to in less than 2 weeks to go before the election. We'll continue to map out the path to 270 for both candidates. This is Trump is continuing to demonstrate an erratic search for a closing message. We'll watch for the release of this 60 Minutes interview. The Obama rally is happening, I think, at 5:45, so we'll be obviously keeping an eye on that. This is Biden remains off the trail, Harris in North Carolina, the Trump rally at 7, also in North Carolina. We'll stay on all the early voting threads, more than 33 million now casting votes so far. The voter suppression questions and threatening emails, Pam Brown will have the voting wrap piece for us. We'll also be watching the stimulus talks to see if there's movement there. And then obviously COVID, the new surge, no state trending in the right direction, this concern about a rapid acceleration in the next couple of weeks. All of this is Trump is saying there's not much he would do differently. We'll keep an eye on all these task force officials through the day, Fauci this morning, and then Hahn, Redfield, and Azar later this afternoon to see what news comes out of that. And we'll have our doctors and the Nick Watt wrap piece. We also have the Griffin piece mentioned on this, the origins of this shoddy science report, and we'll be getting our international whips in as well. That's where we're starting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
Yes, I do. I just want to salute and thank Brianna's team, Eric, and all the others who did that brilliant show opening, responding to the president, calling CNN dumb bastards. She spoke for all of us and presented exactly what we've been doing for the last 7 months. And I just wanted to recommend to anybody who hasn't seen it to go to CNN.com and watch it.
You're here. Totally agree. Anyone else? Okay, let's remember the debate is tomorrow night. And another reminder that I will be doing a town hall today at noon Eastern. We've received an extraordinary amount of questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can. Noon Eastern time, you will get a link to watch it just prior to noon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.